City of Toronto's abominable housing crisis. We're going to hear from Kiri Vadavelu, who is the Municipal Socialist Action candidate for mayor. My name is Barry Weisletter, and I'm the campaign manager. And we're here in the beautiful sunshine in Nathan Phillips Square on May the 5th. The 5th or the 6th? Anyway, we've had so little sun. We're celebrating the sunshine today. But unfortunately, it's not a sunny day for the homeless people of Toronto, and City Hall bears a lot of the responsibility for this situation, including the candidates running for mayor now. But I present to you the Municipal Socialist Alliance candidate, Kiri Vadavelu.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. So, City of Toronto politicians, senior officials, big landlords, land developers, and the construction industry have blood on their hands. The Municipal Socialist Alliance is pouring onto City Hall Square a representation of the blood of 187 victims of the worsening houseless crisis today. Toronto Public Health found that 3 houseless Torontonians died every last year. 187 lives lost in the year of 2022 due to lack of shelter in one of the world's richest cities. For women, the median average death amid housing precarity was just 42 years old, versus an overall life expectancy citywide was 84 and is today 84. Today we learned that housing benefit meant to help Toronto shelter residents afford the city's soaring rent and climb out of homelessness, which was supposed to last through spring of 2024, is set to run out of money after only 2 months. Can you believe that? So what do many candidates of mayor of Toronto say should be done about this terrible housing crisis? My name is Kiri Vadavelu, the Municipal Socialist Alliance candidate for the mayor. I'm the founding member of Scarborough Tenant Union, the MSA, and I demand the city build housing for all. Woo! The MSA, we say nationalize big landlords, yet along with big construction firms, so that large-scale social planning can occur to meet human needs, not private profit. The treatment of houseless people is cruel and outrageous. They are being sacrificed on the altar of private profit. I call it a social murder. To rely on the capitalist system to solve this crisis is a social murder. The capitalist system has got to go. Right here's an example. It has to go. The MSA and I aim to establish workers' government at all levels to put people before profit. Socialism means ownership under democratic workers' control. Vote socialist on June 26. I'm Kiri Vadavelu, and I'm running to be Toronto's first socialist mayor. It doesn't matter how many come, there's only one socialist mayor and the choice is clear. I will pass it on to my campaign manager and my friend Barry Weisletter to expand on this.
Sisters and brothers, comrades and friends, a housing benefit that was meant to help Toronto's shelter residents afford the city's soaring rents and climb out of homelessness is set to run out of money after only 2 months. Toronto City Hall has been sounding the alarm about the portable housing subsidy program, which will exhaust this year's funds by May the 31st. The once per year funding allocation was meant to last until the spring of 2024, amid climbing homelessness and the closing of shelters. Last month, city officials said they would be receiving $9.5 million for the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit over the coming year, starting April the 1st, compared to the $12.3 million it had received the year before. What does the difference mean? It means that it will be impossible able to enroll 500 new recipients into this program compared to last year. The benefit is meant to bridge the gap between what a person can afford and market rents. But at the current rate of uptake, Toronto expects all available funding for this year to be spent within a few weeks, meaning it will stop accepting referrals until money starts flowing again. An extra $20 million in COHP funding is immediately needed. City Council should provide it immediately. There is money for cops on the TTC and for soccer stadium upgrades. Why not for emergency housing? City data shows Toronto's homeless population swelled to 10,811 people in March, from 9,933 people a year before. In March of this year, the latest month included in public reporting an average of 119.8 people each day were turned away from calling for shelter space. Meanwhile, the city is continuing with plans to shut down its pandemic-era shelters, with the downtown Strathcona Hotel, home to youth and adult programs, set to close this summer. Isn't that shameful? Many shelter occupants rely on social assistance programs. Right now, the average single person on the province's disability supports receives a maximum of $1,200 per month, 522 of which is earmarked to cover their housing costs. What a sick joke that is. The average purpose-built rental apartment in the Toronto area has edged above $3,000 per month. Now I'm going to turn the floor back over to Kiri Vadavello, our candidate for mayor, with some solutions to this crisis.
Thank you, Barry. That was a great explanation, Barry. So here's what more about the Municipal Socialist Alliance says about the current severe housing crisis. Skyrocket rents are driving working class families, low-income communities, seniors, students out of GTA into debt and unsafe or deplorable living conditions, into the shelter system or onto the street, in our streets. Those who can pay inflated rent are being heavily exploited. The housing market is dominated by real estate and development speculators, and we know who they are, and we know how disgusting that industry is. The establishment is completely unwilling to fight the solution we need. It is time to build rent-income housing, publicly owned and appropriately accessible housing. In the meantime, what do we do? Expropriate vacant units in large multi-unit buildings, assign them to people in dire need of housing. Landlord license is needed so landlords who fail to keep units in good repair and meet basic needs would have their rental properties turned into cooperatives. Today, the only incentive is profit, and that is not helping. Today, if you want an ice cream truck on the street, you need license. But a landlord who is responsible for hundreds of people and many children in the properties, and they don't need a license. And that's why we are here today. It's a shame, it's long overdue. So, orders and judgment against these landlords must be enforced. We don't see any landlords fear of repairing their apartments to keep their main building. What they do in turn is to make it worse, so tenants will leave, and so they can jack up the rent. Again, there's another problem that we need to address. So, there are several points I have here today made. One, repeal Code 608, the no camping bylaw.
Here.
Why? Because we don't have housing for people, we know, and if people cannot live people cannot camp themselves. What are they saying? The current politicians right now saying, if you cannot afford a home, you have to commit suicide. It is a disgrace in Toronto, and we are not going to let them do that. Eliminate blind bidding on property sales. That's number point 2. Why? because real estate industry is shady by default. Today, it serves only to make profit, not our communities, and they don't belong in our communities. And introduce, point 3, introduce real rent control freeze. Why? The same point I touched on earlier. Today, when a tenant leaves, it's a happy day for landlords, the big landlords. Why? They can jack up the rent. It's a shame. And this current city hall and the previous city hall administration had zero interest in our community. That's why they let this happen. And number point 4, vacancy tax to kick in after 3 months at property value of annual value of 30%, not after 3 years. Why would we want to keep a livable space empty while people are dying on the street? And expropriate those empty spaces after 2 years of vacancy. Well, it makes sense to keep that and use it. And obviously, primary residents are excluded because we know how hard our working people have to work to make the ends meet today.
That's right.
Point 5, put a freeze on property tax for personal property. Again, the same point. People cannot afford to live in our city, and it only getting worse. We must do everything we can to protect the working class people to be able to live in our city. Point 6, introduce 30% tax annually on investment properties. This does not include, again, the individual renting out of their basement from their personal residence. Why? If you live in a residence, that is not an investment property. That is your personal residence. And point 7, aggressive inclusionary zoning. 50% of newly constructed condo units to be rented at median market rent. Again, why? Because average market rent is so high, people cannot afford to live.
That's right.
So, point 8, public registry of property ownership, which includes the designation of primary and personal residences. And this year to be spent with weeks, meaning it will stop accepting. Oh, excuse me. Meaning secondary investment properties, individual would be limited to 2 primary personal residences. So again, the personal properties are exempt from that condition. Number 9, hire more housing inspectors. Today, we don't have inspectors to inspect the units that are falling apart. And that's why tenants have to organize and fight. Create publicly accessible system for reporting landlord abuses. We have a good 311 system. Why are we not using it? Build another layer to collect the landlord abuses. And that's when the city can take action. And point 10, introduce mechanism to transfer property from landlord to city. Well, A, city has right of first refusal if landlord sells the property. B, city takes over for bad landlords.
Here, here.
And that's when we will have safe housing for people. Today, people, the landlords, big landlords, and these real estate speculators, they have demo for tenants, and they are showing a demo where the building is full of cockroaches, mice, and the kitchen sinks are flooding. And their point is, oh, take it or leave it.
Shame.
Take it or leave it.
Shame.
Well, they benefit from the crisis that we are in. And this is a system. This only benefits the few. And that's what we are trying to say. Make the economy democratic. Make housing a human right. And make hold these giant landlords accountable. And point 11, all housing units be expropriated by the city will be rented as non-profit housing. rent would cover only utilities and maintenance. And that would make sure the landlords actually do their basic duties, maintenance and repairs. Why are they collecting rents in the first place anyways?
Profit.
It's profit. And the money is not staying in this city. It is not invested in our city. It's going offshore accounts.
Shame.
And it is our city built on our tax dollars, take our money from our city, going offshore. It's crime, it's money laundering, many under the carpet. And last point, index the shelter allowance to median market rent. Everybody in the city agree. Nobody can live on the minimum social assistance shelter allowance. But on the other side, we let people suffer anyway. This is immoral. And this is 2023. I think we could do better. And that's why we have this campaign, the Crossroad campaign, to change the status quo, to put workers' control in this city hall so we can solve this crisis in the city and take our city forward, not backward. Thank you.
Okay, I thank you for attending this news conference and protest against the city's housing policy. The city has literally blood on its hands. And we're here to say shame, and we need to build social housing on a massive scale, and we need the city to go into the housing business and to provide necessary shelter for those who need it. It's a matter of life or death. Do you have any questions for our candidate, Kiri Vadavellu?
Yeah, okay. I Kiri, get you a red point then. I think anyone paying attention knows housing is a huge problem. Yes. But what's your timeline for this? And is there a precedent in Canada or in Ontario for a city expropriating private units? And don't you think that may be a big part of your time in office, dealing with the legality of private?
Well, that's a really good question, by the way. When we look back in history, in the World War II crisis, there was a mass mobilization to build housing. And today, the same thing, we have the pandemic crisis, and there's no mobilization to build mass housing. There's only more construction for the profit of the few. And that's why we need city publicly funded construction firms and build housing for people instead of just for the profit. And that's what needs to be happening. And when a MSA candidate we get elected, that is what our first priority is. That is to expropriate. In the meantime, we expropriate landlords to provide the housing so people don't continue to die in 200s and 300s on our street every year. At the same time, we build the long-term, publicly funded cooperative housing so people can live. And that is what makes a democratic, inclusive city.
The only other question I have is I went through some of your literature. You're calling for a 50% reduction in the police budget. Will that not cause a level of chaos through the city? Because that would mean probably 50% less police on the streets.
That's right. Good question. And this is what we've been working on for the last few years now. We have a complete action plan on how we can implement the 50% reduction without causing any desperate condition for our communities. We already have it in the program. I invite everybody to take a look at the website, socialistalliance.ca, and our campaign website, giri-bodyweilu.ca, the complete walkthrough. But to explain in few words, what today police are doing police work only less than 10% of the time. 90% of the time, police are responding to mental health crisis, housing crisis, and this is not police work. This is the social work that needs to be addressed through a social improvement lens. So that's why we dedicate that 50% police budget toward the community through mental health initiatives, to housing initiatives, so that not only we can save lives, we can cut down the cost of people ending up in the prison system. So when we cut down because the police budget on the service, it looks big, but in the end, we actually save a lot of money for the city, and it's doable today.
We don't need police on paid overtime on the TTC or at construction sites. We need policing to deal with entirely different kinds of things. The priority is social services in this city, and we need to actually replace the police with community-controlled policing. A lot of the cops who are paid six-figure salaries live somewhere else, not in Toronto. So we need a new day. Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming to this news conference and protest. We have combined the two in one, and we're not going to rest until the city meets the necessary augmentation of budget to deal with the shelter allowance that is going to run out in just 21 days. There will be more deaths on the streets in cold weather. This is intolerable. Toronto's a rich city. It's a city for the working class, not for the giant landlords and developers. We're dedicated to that proposition. Thank you very much for coming today.